Yo, Game Pass sucks. Hey, who said that? Did I piss you guys off? No, I don't think Xbox Game Pass sucks. I think Xbox Game Pass is actually probably one of the best things that's ever happened to Xbox to a degree. I feel like since the Xbox 360's kind of end, Xbox was on a huge decline until Game Pass came out and kind of saved their asses. And since then, I feel like it's been very controversial in the gaming landscape. I feel like tons of people live and breathe by Game Pass. They'll preach you the future of Game Pass and how it's here to change gaming forever. And then I feel like you have other people who are saying Game Pass is the reason for Xbox's downfall. And I feel like there's people like me who stand somewhere weirdly in the middle. I think Xbox Game Pass has been an amazing thing for not only Xbox as a company, but for consumers who aren't really interested in buying all these games all the time, but always want to have something interesting to play and something different. So I feel like overall, Xbox Game Pass has been a double-edged sword for, again, both the consumer and company alike. I feel like it's a great to have all these fun and crazy games coming in from different publishers and different developers, and Xbox does a really good job of kind of filling it in with tons of day one games like Atomic Heart, like Wulong Fallen Dynasty. But then you have things like Redfall. You have things like Halo. A lot of their first parties that aren't really up to snuff compared to what we expect and want from Xbox. So I kind of in this video want to just highlight some things I really like about Xbox Game Pass, some things I hate about it, and then some things that are kind of who knows. Alright, so to start things off with the things that are good, everyone knows as a consumer, if you know about Game Pass, it's one of the greatest gaming values that you can really invest into. For $15 a month, you have a huge gaming catalog, a huge gaming library full of tons of backlog games and some new IPs coming into it consistently. You can play things like the original Fable. You can play things like Halo Master Chief Collection. You can play things like Bad Fur Day, like with Rare Play and stuff like that. You can play things like Wulong Fallen Dynasty or things like Atomic Heart. Like they do a good job of keeping a nice influx of games in there, not to mention a lot of their legacy titles. Not to mention, aside from the consumer, it is a great thing for developers. A lot of developers who want to make these kind of passion projects like Hi-Fi Rush, like Pentiment, have the freedom to kind of experiment with things that maybe they wouldn't be able to if they were financially more tied to it. Even if you look away from like their first party developers into some of the indie developers who get ecstatic when they get that kind of Game Pass money, because it means that they don't have to worry about not making any money off of this. They made some kind of profit, and now everything else after that is just going to be extra profit. Things like the team behind Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge have expressed their gratitude towards things like Game Pass. And that's really awesome to see. It's nice to see that there's a safe place for games like this. Now let's go to the bad side. I want to go to games like Wulong, games like Atomic Heart, that aren't 9 out of 10 games. There's 6 or 7s at best, sometimes 8s. I don't think Game Pass really gets you the best, most top tier quality games, to be honest. You might get things like Psychonauts 2 that do amazing, but is that enough to justify purchasing the console itself? No, a lot of times not. For some people, yes, but not for everybody. But then you say, well, then you can just play those games on PC because Game Pass is available on PC. And that's really cool. That's, again, another consumer-friendly practice. The problem is it kind of devalues the console. If your games are available to be purchased anywhere, then why do we have this box that exists? What's the purpose of this box? And again, if we were to go back to the topic of third-party developers, things like companies like Square Enix don't like to put their games on Xbox. Even Capcom doesn't like to put a lot of their games on Xbox. Yes, they're gonna put their big games on Xbox, but they're not gonna put their smaller titles. Why? Well, because things like Game Pass incentivizes the consumer not to buy games for the Xbox because you have tons of games to play on Game Pass. So why would you go out and buy a different game when you already have tons of games that you have not played yet that you're going to invest time to play in for already the $15 a month? So if I'm a third-party developer and I say, hey, if I were to put this game on Xbox, it's probably not going to sell as well as it would on the Switch, on the PlayStation. So why would I do that when it probably isn't worth the hassle? If I'm only going to sell a couple thousand units, why would you invest the time to develop a specific Xbox version of that game? Now let's look into kind of the unknown of Game Pass. Because Game Pass is kind of the first of its kind, at least at the level that it's at, there's a lot of unknown as far as how this is going to impact the industry. I think when you look at the way games have been measured in the past, things like Metacritic score, things like game sales, those things all go out the window when you talk about Game Pass. So now, where's the metric of success on Game Pass? Is it how many people engaged with the game? Is it how many people have actually subscribed to Game Pass because of a specific game? Only Xbox knows this kind of analytics, and it's going to be very interesting for game developers who are now saying, hey, your game has to draw an X amount of subscribers specifically for your game, or your game has to get specific amount of achievement points on it to say that it was a success. It's just a weird way of trying to determine what a successful game on Game Pass is or looks like. And then we talk about things like the Netflix effect, where we have tons of actors, tons of film directors who kind of outcry and say that Netflix has hurted film as a industry. And then we see things like Ubisoft, EA, even PlayStation have their own kind of subscription services coming into play. You kind of start to make the connection to Netflix. After Netflix came out, you had things like Hulu, Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, Apple TV, all these kind of subscription services that are kind of clashing with one another, where it doesn't just work like it did in the past. Now you kind of have all these random subscription services that you're paying monthly for, but you're not always kind of using them or engaging with all of them. So how is it going to work when you have a subscription service to Ubisoft, to EA, to Xbox, and you're only playing maybe one game a month on there, or maybe one game every couple of months, but you're still giving them money consistently? At that point, you kind of have to call the whole value thing in question. If it really is the best value in gaming, that only is determined based off of how much you're actually engaging with it. And if eventually there's multiple different subscription services and you're subscribed to multiple different subscription services, are you just throwing money down the drain like you would a Netflix account that you haven't watched the newest episode of Stranger Things for? Overall, I think Xbox Game Pass is a great thing for Xbox, and it definitely saved them in the short term. But in the long term, it's yet to be seen if this is really the path that they should be treading. And I think there's a lot of people who are being a little overdramatic, a little hyperbolic, saying that Game Pass is going to be the downfall of Xbox. I can't say for sure, and no one can really say for sure, because we don't have the numbers. All we know is that Xbox is the most profitable that it's ever been, and a lot of that is credited to things like Game Pass. How long that's going to last is going to be another question. How much new subscribers are going to be able to get, and how they grade their developers is going to be interesting just to see how this future's kind of unfold for Xbox. Overall, again, I'm always still rooting for Xbox to do good, so I'm hoping that this Game Pass isn't going to be a detriment to them, and they could actually kind of leverage it in a way where, as Phil says, isn't going to stifle the creativity of their development team, that it's going to allow them to kind of develop these passion projects. Only time is going to tell, and hopefully at this next Xbox showcase, they kind of prove to us that this is valid, this is useful, and this is something that we can really draw a stake and say it is good for Xbox. Well, those are all my thoughts on Game Pass as far as the things I like, things I don't like, and kind of just what the future may or may not hold. With that, let me know down below, you guys, if you're a fan of Xbox, if you're a fan of Xbox Game Pass. Do me a favor and like the video if you guys enjoyed yourself. Please subscribe, or at least consider subscribing, as it does help me out tons. And with that, I'll catch you guys on the next video.